So, what do you think your ultimate word count may be? Where do you think you are? Okay, so you're at 40,000 words. Where do you think you are
I'm
with the
gonna end.
story?
I'm gonna end up at least 150.
Yeah, that
I,
sounds
I
about
don't
right.
see it coming in much below that unless I just flake out and trim a bunch of stuff. And I've got some pretty detailed ideas about how I want to handle some of these events behind the scenes.
Well, that's not horrible for historical fiction, actually.
No,
That's
it's not. And
right in the ballpark.
from what
Yeah.
I'm looking at, that's probably where I would expect
Yeah.
it to go.
Okay.
Um, I'm gonna at some point need to make a decision about whether I'm going to end it in summer 1862 or push it all the way into December, because there are important events that happen then for the characters that I'm writing about, but the really key one ends in July.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, you'll
That's
cross that. You'll
well,
figure it out when you get there.
July is actually a big failure for them all
Oh.
because the Alabama gets away, and their whole mission is to stop it, and they lose. But they actually win because they convince the Brits to enforce their own law. So the ironclad rams that the Confederacy is trying to build do get confiscated, and those are probably the more important weapons anyway.
Gotcha. Huh. Well, I'm looking forward to when you get it done.
My goal for 2022 is to have this done, edited, packaged, all done by the end of the year.
Wow, that's pretty ambitious.
Yes.
All right.
But
well, you've done most of the research already. So
yeah, I'm not going to have to be digging.
Right.
I'm going to have to be writing.
Right. All right.
And we'll see. That's just going to require more commitment to doing.
Well, ambitious doesn't
work.
mean it's undoable. It's
No,
not doable.
no, it's doable.
Yeah. So, okay. So, what's the best thing you read in 2021?
See, that depends on what day you ask me.
I know, right?
To pick out.
That's what I tried to tell the producer too.
One book. So I'm always biased toward the last book that really wowed me.
Yeah.
So right now it's The House in the Cerulean Sea because it really wowed me.
Yeah, that would be on my list. Yeah.
But then if I think back to other books I read earlier in the year, like A Memory Called Empire, or gosh, I have to go way, way back into January and February, and I'm not even sure I can remember what I read.
Right. Well,
that's
why I list everything. I keep a list of everything because
I'm not
otherwise
that
I can't
organized.
remember.
I mean, most of them are here on my, my phone because I read most of my books electronically.
Well, I have to say that one of the top books I read this year was Amber and Clay by Laura Amy Schlitz, and it's a YA and it's really, really good.
Mm-hmm.
And she does the Greek verse as part of that, and I just thought it did all the things. It was emotionally resonant. The characters were engaging. The writing was beautiful. The structure was really well done. I think that and the story itself was a story that you want to be there for.
Right.
So I think that for me, that's one of my top reads of the year. The other one I really liked, and this is interesting because I was looking at this, Everything Sad is Untrue by Daniel Nayeri, which is also considered YA. And it's interesting because he used a structure that was similar to the 1001 Nights, the Scheherazade stories. And so I think these two being in my top 5 is really interesting because a lot of it has to do with not just the story and the emotional engagement, but the structure of it and the use of that, those, the prose, the style of prose or poetry or what have you that was in it. And then, of course, The Galaxy and the Ground Within by Becky Chambers is on the top of my list this year. I just, right now, I like everything she does. And unfortunately, that's the 4th and last book in that series. So, but then of course, T.J. Klune's The House in the Cerulean Sea, as you mentioned, and Under the Whispering Door, both. I liked both of them very, very much.
See, I'm going back and looking back through my book list at books I had forgotten, although I haven't forgotten them. One is The Pioneers by David McCullough, and it's a history of the settlement of one particular town in Ohio, starting right at the turn of the 19th century. And it's good because it follows one small group of people from New England to establishment of this town, dealing with the natives and dealing with adversity and plagues and floods, and it just is very evocative of the kind of people that would uproot themselves from a settled existence and go into the wilderness. And I just really enjoyed it. Another one that I had almost forgotten, and I look back and say, how could I forget that, is Underground Airlines by Ben Winters. You've got to read this book.
Underground Airlines.
Underground Airlines. Think of the Underground Railroad.
Okay.
It's modern times. The Civil War never happened, and slavery still exists in 4 southern states, the hard 4. And the only free zone in Atlanta, in Georgia, is the territory around Atlanta, which seceded from Georgia and declared itself a free city.
Wow.
Underground Airlines involves getting indentured workers, as they call them now. You're born with the indenture, unfortunately, out of the South via smuggling them into Atlanta Hartsfield and getting them on airplanes.
Wow. All right.
You think it's one thing, and then in the end you find out that the guy that has been kind of the protagonist and you're rooting for him has a really twisted past.
Oh, I read another book this year that was like that, where I was like, oh yeah, I'm all in for this protagonist. It's called The Black Prism, and it's dense. It's the first book in a series. It's 600 pages. I'm all like, oh yeah, root for the protagonist. And then you find out this guy is not who you think he is at all.
Well, this guy still is who you think he is, but he doesn't come from where you thought he came from.
Is it Brent Weeks, I think, wrote The Black Prism?
Might be. The book and the name are familiar. I don't know if they fit together. Another one is Pacific Glory by P.T. Duderman. It's part of his World War II in the Pacific series. And it's a very evocative and gritty naval war story that just hit me. And I've read a lot of his other books. This one was particularly striking for me. And the one that I had mentioned on our last visit, I want to say Carnival, but that's not what it is.
Carousel.
No.
I thought you said...
Is it Carousel? It's in here somewhere. Bacchanal.
Oh, Bacchanal, that's right.
Yeah, Bacchanal. That's another one that I would strongly recommend.
Okay.
Again, the ending was a little contracted, almost like the author got to the end and decided she just needs to end this. It wasn't as good as I expected, but everything leading up to it is just really cool.
Well, the longest book I read this year was 1,007 pages.
See, I don't know that I have the energy to
The Way of Kings
sustain
by
that.
Brandon Sanderson, and I felt, and I think I reviewed it by saying, not only is it about an epic quest, reading it is an epic quest. So,
yes. I never started The Way of Kings. I loved Mistborn. I loved
yeah.
that whole trilogy, and then the
He's
Alloy
very
Law
talented,
trilogy.
but honestly, 1,000 pages, that's a major commitment, and it's book one. It's book one.
I know.
It's so painful to think that, no, I can't do this again. I just can't.
I know. I haven't gone back to Sanderson.
Yeah.
other than some of his shorter works that I had not seen before, that I had not read before, that I picked up.
Right.
And I found them strangely not as satisfying as the whole Mistborn world is.
I thought Mistborn was really good. Yeah.
You know, and his
magic systems are
and
really...
that has influenced a lot of my own magical systems.
Yeah. They're well thought out. Yeah, I can see that. I could see that for your magic series.
Yeah. And then I'm going way back now to look for anything else that... There really wasn't much else that really stood out and grabbed me. Certainly that was new for